He says, why then is common sense so important? Because it is a terrain of conceptions and categories on which the practical consciousness of the masses of the people is actually formed. It is the already formed and taken for granted terrain on which more coherent ideologies and philosophies must contend for mastery. The ground which new conceptions of the world must take into account, contest, and transform if they were to shape the conceptions of the world of the masses in the way that becomes historically effective. Basically, what Hall is talking about here is that we have embedded within us very heavily cemented notions of how the world works. If we want to change people's minds and think about the world operating differently, we have to contend with those deeply embedded and vitally held conceptions of how the world operates. And it's a struggle. So I thought that was like kind of, I mean, that's what you're doing, you know? You're challenging common sense. You're challenging the Overton window of acceptable ideas. And, you know, I thought that was eloquently put.
Don't give me too much credit. I think it's just my kink to talk about taboo subjects, and it's just led me here, you know?
I love the dialectic.
Bing bong.
This is the I, Dan Simpson Show.
We do it because it's right.
I love the dialectic.
His testicles became swollen.
Based.
Do not come. Do not come.
I'm gonna come. Please clap.
Who's this man? This man in the hat.
It's me.
I'm gonna ruin this.
You're a stupid baby, Dan. Not me.
Oh, I forgot about that one. We'll have to get rid of that. Welcome to the show. This is the I, Dan Simpson Show with I, Dan Simpson. It me, I, Dan Simpson, from the I, Dan Simpson Show with I, Dan Simpson. Today on the show, we're going to bring on Rathbone. Rathbone, anarchist musician and, you know, friend of mine. Champion of the stream as well. Rathbone. Everyone, please welcome.
Please clap.
Rathbone. All right. You're back. How you doing today, Rathbone? Welcome back.
I'm doing all right. I've been up for about 2 hours, so that's usually a good thing for me to get on your level, because I know you've been at it for quite some time. So I gotta get some speed up. But I'm happy to be here. Okay, a lot has happened since the last time we chatted, and I've been watching your stream. I've been catching what you're doing on Twitter, and I've been learning a lot from your material analysis. The thing that you pride yourself on, which is material fucking analysis, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, because it's real.
It is real.
It's not made up.
Something we need to talk about. Yeah.
We should talk about that more. It seems like we get pulled into non-material conversations too much, and that's what leads people leads people down the road that they get to often, where they get the brainworms that they have. And I like you because you don't seem to have brainworms. Well, let's just sort of like set the scene here. Rathbone, you're an anarchist musician. You're on that their YouTubes. Great tunes. I fucking love them. My audience loves them. You're an anarchist, but you're not like the annoying kind. You know what I mean? And I really don't mean that to be demeaning. Like, you are the good kind of the anarchist, aka you seem to be an incompatible leftist. One of the kinds of anarchists that like doesn't like hate communism explicitly.
Actually, it's funny that you mentioned that, because this is actually one thing that I really want to talk with you about, because you identify as a Marxist-Leninist, I identify as an anarchist. Those words, I feel like they're such I just couldn't foresee that they would be such words that would be weaponized from the left. Like, I feel like since the last time that I talked with you, I feel I've gotten in fights with other anarchists. I've gotten in fights with other Marxist-Leninists. But like, I've been called a tanky. I've been called an authoritarian leftist. Yeah. I've been called an anarchitty. I've been called a liberal, an anarcho-capitalist, which is hilarious to me. I feel like I've been called like everything that you could be called. But I think the more, getting back to like, I can't, anybody I think can have the term if they like, right? Anybody can call themselves these things, but it's really like the dialogue and that's what I appreciate about you is that you're a nuanced person, and you're like, oh, I don't know about that, but
thank you.
No, but
I like to play,
and so I get called. I feel like everything under the sun, and I think the more that I talk with, I have a lot of friends that are Marxist Leninists, and to me, anarchy, going back to how I define it, is just a principle of dismantling authority, dismantling illegitimate authority, not just authority, but illegitimate powers. And I think that's what Marx and Lenin were doing. So if you're anti-capitalist, the way that I would define it is, being an anarchist is like saying you're a moralist, like you have morals. I mean, that's just my definition. Again, like a lot of anarchists fight with me over this and say, no, it's like no authority whatsoever. And like, to give you an example,
they're lost in the sauce, man, right? They're just lost in the sauce. Those guys, yeah, any authority. No authority.
Yeah.
Wrong.
And it's a baby brain kind of stance to take, because you no matter what, we all give ourselves to some kind of authority in some sort of sense. I bring up the analogy of, like, if you're sick, you go to a doctor. If your car breaks down, you go to a mechanic. If you're going through a global pandemic, you trust science, you trust medical professionals, and I think a lot of anarchists are like, no, we must abolish everything right now, and it's like, dude, we live in a world of nation states. We live in this, I mean, yeah, ultimately, in the pantheon of human history, I would love for us to be a global society of like communities and, no nation states. Sure, that sounds wonderful. But like, how are we going to have a majority, a democracy without first seizing state power? It's like we have this state machinery that is being utilized. We already, and when people, I think a lot of people have a bad taste with the term dictatorship of the proletariat, or a tyranny of the majority, or these words are like. But really, when you think of what does a dictatorship of the proletariat mean? It just means democracy.
That's what
you could just say. Yeah. So like, how are you? And I understand, like, how are you supposed to combat these reactionary forces with just with no movement, no state power, no all these things, and then, like Lenin said, then the state would begin to wither away once the majority would take hold. Yeah. The whole dictatorship of it's like people, the dictatorship of the poor. It's like, we already have a dictatorship of the rich. So we're already living under tyranny. Like, so I would much prefer a dictatorship of the poor, the majority. I would rather see working class interests be represented by government. The only political agency that the public has is government. In theory, like, government should be, in theory, if we're living in a democracy, acting for the people. And like, it's the libertarian argument of saying, like, government is evil. It's like, no, not, libertarians think like capitalism is great, government is evil, without recognizing that capitalism owns government, corporations own government. So they don't make that logical leap there. And, let's fucking seize the state power. Let's have a working class revolution. You know what I mean?
Amen.
Let's seize the armed forces. Let's have a mutiny with the top generals. In a video game, Dan, is what I'm saying, dude.
So I think that one's okay. Yeah. No, absolutely. I'm on board with all that. And it's so wild to consider myself a communist. And then someone's like, oh, well, yeah, we have to get rid of all authority. And I'm like, well, that's unrealistic. And I'm a communist. Right. And they tell me all the time that what I want is completely unrealistic. But of course it's not. It's scientific. It's bound to happen when capitalism destroys itself. Okay, so this is all making sense. And this is why I like anarchists, as long as they don't hate me, and communism. And this is why, I think many anarchists and communists can get along. That sort of brings us to then, Rathbone, like, who are the compatible left then?
In fact, that was a term, the compatible left. I had never heard that before you said that, and I guess I mean, I see that as like most of mainstream fucking society. I mean, I see that as most of everything that we encounter, you know, and it's I mean, to me, it makes me think of like you know, those that are kind of like on the left side, but still believe in Reformation or still play the fucking game. Whereas I think where you're at and where I'm at is that no, there's no reforming this. We need to uproot it. And I can give plenty of examples. This is sort of what I get in arguments with on Instagram with these.
Yeah, because you got a huge meme page going on Instagram. You've picked up a ton of fucking steam there. It's such a blast to watch you take off on Instagram. I'll pull this up as soon as I can. Yeah. Tell us about that journey, and then we'll get into some of these comments that you've been having. Yeah.
Well, I think, you know, as you and I live in this world, obviously memes are influential, and people like memes. So, you know, I think when I start to like I see memes and songs as being different types of propaganda, you know. I think it's more influential, obviously, if I can write a song and use and synthesize all these things that I know into a song, obviously. But memes are you know, that's why people go to Instagram. I think nobody goes to Instagram to really necessarily discover new music. So thank you for sharing the page, by the way. So yeah, I you know, I learned from other pages, and then I sort of started to see, you know, make my own, and then it kind of came naturally. Like, I've never been at this point where like I really wanted to make a meme, but I think the past, I don't know, 6 months or so, I just like went kind of like balls deep into it. So by the way, that Twitter, the tweet that you post is one of my favorite, where you say balls deep state. And then I noticed you have a little thread here on your Discord says balls deep state.
That's the project with me and Matt from Unelectable Airwaves. We're going to be talking about.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that's another stream channel that I watch a lot too. Yeah. He's a late nighter.
He's a late nighter. We were up late. I was up late with him recording our first episode about anti-communism, which is a defining characteristic of the compatible left. They're like sort of these libs often that fall for identity politics, idpol, you know.
Okay.
And but that at the end of the day, they hate communists as much as they hate Nazis, often sometimes more. They don't understand that the Russian communists, the Soviets, were the ones that effectively won World War II, the ones that beat the Nazis. They don't know. Yes. I didn't know back when I was a compatible leftist, not that long ago. That 27 million Soviets died fighting the goddamn Nazis in World War II. All that I knew was 6 million Jews, and that's terrible, fucking insane. You begin to wrap your head around this, but. Well, what about 27 million? It's even that much harder. So they don't tell us this. They didn't teach us this in school. It seems like they left some things out. And as a compatible leftist, I also sort of would apologize for America's imperialism without knowing what imperialism was. So you've been having some, I don't know, you've been having some run-ins with compatible leftists in your IG mentions, yeah?
Oh yeah, I mean, I guess when you say compatible leftists, I think liberals, people that spout imperial narratives, you know, that propagate all that shit. And I think if you can't first understand the premise, which is America is the seat of the evil empire, it's the belly of the beast, it's like it's the greatest danger to world peace. If you can't understand everything from that baseline context, then like you're nonsense to me. Like, you're just not getting it. Like, and so I think it's just human nature to want to look at other people's crimes and say, look, see, they didn't do it right, without understanding. Like, look inward, you know, look at what we're doing, and that's why like I've just come to a realization that I'm an American and I live in America, and I have some form of influence here. I can't speak to other nations, other parts of the world. I don't know what it's like to live there. All I can do, and I trust that working class people in those countries can work on their issues with their governments. But here, I need to focus on, calling attention to the crimes of my own nation. So and that's why I made a meme that's like, unless you're facing Western encirclement, shut the fuck up about Russia and China. Like, you don't know what it's like to be battling capitalist forces that are trying to fucking eat you alive. You know what I mean? And
this one,
and the history of this is like, right? Yeah. Here's a picture of all the, it's like these are all the military bases around the world where we have where the United States has military bases, and it's not even a comparison, like to suggest that America isn't the global superpower, that like Russia and China represent a threat, an existential threat. Like nobody's building up forces. No Russian forces are being built up in Mexico. We have two oceans that separate us, and yet we're meddling in all these other places, that we dominate every hemisphere. We've encircled China. They don't even control their own sea. There's somebody made a joke about like, China wouldn't be so belligerent if they wouldn't quit building their country around our military bases. It's just, it's wild to me that people, we have like close to 1,000 military bases. One of our nuclear submarines could destroy 200 cities with it's equipped with, I don't even know how many nukes. We have 11 of them. We control the seas, we control the pipelines. And when people suggest that NATO, the other thing is talking about the compatible left is when like somebody's like, America's done some bad things, but it's also done some good things. And like NATO is a security alliance. That's what gets me too. Is like when they define, I'm like, where did you read that? The fucking NATO website? That is not at all what NATO represents, and it's a fascist organ. Like I think you said NAFO, right? Didn't you renamed it?
Well, no. NAFO is the name of that doggo, the troll farm, the NAFO troll farm, North Atlantic Fellas Organization.
Oh,
the right
I thought you changed it to North Atlantic Fascist Organization, which works.
You could just stick with NATO, which is Nazis Armed and Trained Organization.
Yeah, I mean, there's just okay. So here's one thing I really wanted to talk about. So, are you familiar with I haven't read his work, but Antonio Gramsci. I'm sure people know of Gramsci or at least heard of him. I don't really actually know what the names of his books are, but he was in exile. He was imprisoned by Mussolini. He was a Marxist communist, imprisoned by Mussolini. And anyway, I haven't read his work, but I really want to do a balls deep dive into his writings. But he coined the term hegemonic common sense. It's a fascinating thing. I think it kind of ties into the compatible left, which you're speaking of. It's like there's in fact I have a quote here I wanted to read, not from him, but from somebody that sort of furthered the idea of common sense. But do
you want to tell us what hegemonic common sense is first?
Yeah, sure. So hegemonic common sense, I mean, is the fact that it's just the idea that we are born into this society where the ruling class rules as it does, and it instills in the population commonsensical ideas that have that they don't represent our class interests, but we accept them as if they are our own. Like one idea would be the American dream is like just a common sense idea, and cultural hegemony. And I'm sure this guy obviously could. The dominance of a culturally diverse society by the ruling class who manipulate the culture of that society. Yeah. So you can think of that how Parenti's talking about the mass media and how it manipulates and how it's owned by corporations. Those corporations want to preserve their class interest. So they show certain stories or they frame things a certain way. And, these reporters, these journalists, without even knowing it or not, they've instilled, like, you don't rise to the top of being like the Washington Post editor if you haven't already internalized these things and you know what not to say and what to say. So we're just, without even really thinking, we've just been indoctrinated since, as far as we can remember, with this, hegemonic common sense, what Gramsci calls that. And one of those would be the American dream. The American dream has two meanings. The American dream has a positive meaning and a negative meaning. The positive meaning, which is like a myth, is that, work hard, play by the rules, and you'll be successful. And built into that narrative is the idea of meritocracy. It's like, if you, it's based on the merit of your work, of what you do. And, what is the idea of success? Like, in a capitalist system, what is the idea of what does success look like? Well, it's just to acquire. It's the acquisition of commodities. The success just looks like we're gonna, commoditize our lives. That's the success that a capitalist system can offer us. And we've just accepted this as like true as the air we breathe, And I think when you say, compatible leftist, like, I encounter people like that just like, even just like recently, some dude was like, I was talking about how, I don't know, just the injustices of America and all this stuff. And he said, if you don't like it, you can change your situation. This is America. He's all this nonsense. But yeah, but the second meaning is, so the first meaning is like, work hard, play by the rules, you'll be successful. The obverse meaning of that would be, if you don't work hard, it's your fault. If you're not successful, it's your fault. It's the individual's fault. And this is just like a common sense idea that I'm bringing it up because literally people say this in either, Instagram or Twitter whenever I share something, or if I get into an argument with somebody. I mean, like, these ideas are persistent, and it's like, I just feel like trying to battle that is like tough, to try to get people to realize that this is a fucking lie. And you got to have like statistics and evidence and stuff to back it up. But it's also like, how do you explain all this in a tweet? You know what I mean?
I have an idea. You let this little Chinese girl do it. Can I play? Can I play this for you? Have you seen this? She says, the American dream is where an individual gets rich. Risk is the essence. This so-called success is obtained through individual effort and grind. Yep, like what you're saying. Success is becoming a capitalist and then exploiting others, like what I was saying. The Chinese dream, China. Big bad China. Oh, Lord, she coming. She'll be coming around the mountain when she comes. I hope she sees
Ban
this.
her.
The Chinese dream is everyone getting wealthy together. The objective is the happiness of people. In other words, the American dream is an individual's dream, a dream for the American dollar. The Chinese dream is the people's dream, a dream that serves the people. This is the essential difference between the two. That's the dialectical understanding, homies. Yep. She's got it. Don't mention the American dream when I'm around. Vulgar, apparently she says. How about that?
That's one smart cookie right there, I have to say.
But that's the thing. Like, it's so unfathomable to imagine a kid in the United States talking, like that. It's not within the cultural. It's just not allowed. It doesn't happen. It's so unallowed that it just would never happen here. It would be so wild to hear a kid talking like that.
Yeah, that's vilified. That's not part of the common sense. Yeah, also just getting back to common sense, like the idea that it changes over time. Common sense is not, it changes based on society over history. What was common sense at one point is not common sense in another point. I want to read a quote from Stuart Hall, if you don't mind. I don't know who Stuart Hall is, but he's quoted in this book called The Consequences of Capitalism. And so he says, why then is common sense so important? Because it is a terrain of conceptions and categories on which the practical consciousness of the masses of the people is actually formed. It is the already formed and taken for granted terrain on which more coherent ideologies and philosophies must contend for mastery. the ground which new conceptions of the world must take into account, contest, and transform if they were to shape the conceptions of the world of the masses in the way that becomes historically effective. Basically, what Hall is talking about here is that we have embedded within us very heavily cemented notions of how the world works. If we want to change people's minds and think about the world operating differently, we have to contend with those deeply embedded and vitally held conceptions of how the world operates. And it's a struggle. So I thought that was like kind of, I mean, that's what you're doing, you know? You're challenging common sense. You're challenging the Overton window of acceptable ideas. And, you know, I thought that was eloquently put.
Don't give me too much credit. I think it's just my kink to talk about taboo subjects, and it's just led me here, you know? Yeah.
I'm gonna go ahead and pat you on the back, okay, Dan? If you're not gonna do it, I am, okay? And I think all of chat will agree with me here.
We're talking about a couple different things here. Consequences of capitalism. I pulled up Noam Chomsky and Marv Waterstone. Is that accurate?
Yeah, okay. This is from Marv Waterstone. It was a series of lectures from one of their classes, and yeah, it's a pretty good indictment against capitalism. And it's got, you know, he quotes a lot of Marx and like a lot of interest. I mean, I really like the book Capital, which I will never read in my life because I hear it's like just a monster of a book. Something that I learned was, you know, that we're not selling our labor. Labor is like priceless, right? We're selling our labor power to the owners. We're selling our ability, and they decide how to use that power. You know, just how that's not much different than being I'm not going to say like a true slave, like where you're actually owned, but you are kind of owned. You know, being a wage, that's why it's called wage slavery, is that the fact that you're selling the ability to reproduce yourself for that basket of commodities that you need to survive. So the owner is only going to pay you what the market deems you need to get your food, you know, your housing, and nothing more, because, you know, if you were able to accrue wealth, then, you know, they wouldn't have somebody to exploit. So we're all living a very precarious life by design. We're made to fucking worry if we're going to make next month's rent, you know, and that's how basically I'm living, and I know most people are living. But yeah, the concept of like labor versus labor power, which is something that Marx talked about. You're not selling your labor. Labor is like inherent in you know, then you would be able to decide what it is, but you're selling your ability to labor, to work, your labor power.
I'm just realizing, you know, you're reading Inventing Reality.
Yeah.
A lot of people have not read Inventing Reality. A lot of people have read instead Manufacturing Consent by Noam Chomsky.
Yeah.
I'm here to say I've read neither. I'm better than all of them. But I have heard that people seem to like Inventing Reality by Parenti more. They say Chomsky's a little bit dry, whereas Parenti's a little bit easier to read, and his analysis is more complete. I can't speak to that. I know, I feel like you mentioned previously that you also haven't read Manufacturing Consent. I get the main idea, you know, I think you get the gist, right? Yeah. However, I got to get around to this Parenti, because I'm noticing, you know, now as I'm getting more familiar with the material, which is that, you know, Parenti and Chomsky, they got some beef. Chomsky, he's got a bit of a anti-communist streak, and I didn't know that until really recently. Until I sort of read it for myself. I'm like, wow, homie. In fact, in Black Shirts and Reds, Parenti gets into some of Chomsky's anti-communisms, his compatible leftisms, and I'm just like, it's sort of wild for me as still a relatively new, actually existing socialist. I'm just like, and again, as I'm getting more familiar with the material, I'm like, wow, They beefed. Did you know much about this?
Absolutely. I think you're spot on. And I remember when you were reading Black Shirts and Reds, and I was like really inspired by what you were doing. And that's why actually when my girlfriend had a free PDF of Inventing Reality that I decided to start reading on stream. And that was basically because I saw you doing that.
Awesome.
And I was like, Yeah. So I read a little bit on stream. I haven't gotten back to that, but I read like maybe 30 pages in. You know, inventing reality, manufacturing consent. They kind of sound similar, and they are similar. I mean, they're basically a takedown of mass media because, you know, once again, fighting the common sense that the free press operates independent of capital, and you know that's a farce. You know, and he goes through it in vivid detail and has all kinds of examples and quotes from, you know, the editors, and it just basically breaks it down for you, and it's really good. But yeah, the whole Parenti versus Chomsky thing is a thing, and I've, you know, recently, within this past year, kind of understood more of the arguments, and you know, I can't really. I don't want to pick either or. I just feel like both of them are so important to me, and I've learned so much from Chomsky, even if he has you know, some bad takes, or perhaps he's not right about everything. And you know, who is right about everything? But I understand the gripes with you know, his views on the USSR. It's like Chomsky's like unforgiving of the USSR, and people such as Parenti are saying, hey, wait, you know, like this was socialism under siege. You know, what do you expect? This is you know, you seem to appreciate all the revolutions except for the successful ones, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But God, I mean, I like that. I can't speak on. I tend to side with Parenti on that. You know, I don't want to have to pick either or. I just feel like I learned so much from them both. Like I appreciate like Chomsky's rhetoric, the way that he can break down things, and it just sticks with me. So I'm so thankful for him for getting me there. But Parenti is also entertaining, like not entertaining, but very insightful, of course. And you know, they just speak very differently, but I think they're in the right place. I don't know. What's your take? I mean,
okay, fuck, marry, kill. Parenti, Chomsky, Kwame Ture.
Wait, who's the third?
AKA Stokely Carmichael. He changed his name to Kwame Ture. He's the other guy that I play a ton of videos of all the time.
Okay,
including some other guys.
I probably know him if I saw him.
He was in Black Panther Party student nonviolent coordinating committee. He moved to fucking Ghana, hung out with Kwame Nkrumah, changed his name to Kwame Ture. Getting prepped for our chat here. Inventing Reality by Parenti was written in, I believe, 86. Okay, and then Manufacturing Consent came out in 88. They had a lot of overlap. Some people say Parenti's analysis is more comprehensive and Chomsky's less. And yet, despite that fact, Chomsky didn't even mention Parenti's book. That's a little weird, especially knowing that they have beef. Right?
I didn't know that. I only recently learned that. I thought Manufacturing Consent came out in like the 70s, but I was surprised to learn that it came out after Inventing Reality. I feel like, Parenti doesn't get enough credit in that regard.
Yeah, there's certainly not enough Parenti credit in the world. People need to watch it. They need to watch that fucking yellow Parenti and change their lives. That's one of those videos that radicalized the fuck out. Every time I watch it, I'm like, oh, he's pulling me left.
Yep. Wait, that's right. You can feel it. He's passionate, you know, and that's with the
Chomsky thing, you take the good with the bad, just like Parenti. I mean, maybe one day I graduate beyond his level of analysis. I doubt it. Like, maybe that's what happens, and we as materialists have to be open to that being the case, to learning more and more and more and more, looking back to what someone said and going, oh, fuck, I guess that was a bad take. You know, that happens all the time. They should happen all the time. If you're regularly engaging with this kind of content, you should be growing up and graduating past a certain level of analysis. I'm not speaking to you, Rathbone. It's just
but you're right. I mean, I need to look inward and
specifically you, Rathbone. Yeah, that's the thing, and it's what I really love to encourage on my channel, because I know what I get out of that. I love to be able to learn. One of the ways of learning is being open to being wrong. And, you look around the world and a bunch of fucking people are wrong. Sometimes it's you. And the more, if you're open to have a material understanding of the world, and having what you think is your material understanding updated by a better understanding, that's called a material analysis of the world. It's a process. It's not a conclusion. However, a lot of people who use that process reach similar conclusions. Am I right?
Yes, you. Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at some of these. I try to study up, and I wanted to be insightful here, and I think that you'll find this interesting. Just a few more like little ideas that I've read about, like
please,
the concept of like positive rights versus negative rights. Like positive rights is in essence, it's like the government secures needs of the people. It gets involved. There's a welfare system. There's public education. Whereas negative rights is like the libertarian in essence, like government is evil, doesn't get involved. And one thing I learned was like in the founding of the country, the founding fathers, be as problematic as they were sort of pre-capitalist, and they did infer like a positive rights interpretation of the free press. In other words, they thought that the government was important in disseminating an independent and providing for an independent press. And the way that they did that was with government subsidy, was with the U.S. Postal Service at the time, because most people, that's at that time, that's newspapers was how you got your news. So that was really important. One of the things also is that I found really interesting was, and this is from Marx. Marx created this, or not created it, but he interpreted this and dispelled this myth, the capitalist myth, which is called primitive accumulation. Since time immemorial, capitalism and capitalists sort of posture like morally, like long ago there were workers that were diligent and dutiful and worked hard, and they accrued their wealth, and they were able to save, and then were able to convert that into capital, and then were able to employ the workers who were the ones that were like gave themselves to vices and squandered their opportunity. Those workers were turned into wage workers, and rightfully so, right? Because they were immoral, and they squandered their opportunity, and this like myth persists today. People, even senators, still say this kind of shit. So it's still like a myth that persists. But what it leaves out, and what Marx drew attention to, is that it's actually not primitive accumulation. It's accumulation through dispossession. You can't accumulate without dispossessing people of their resources, So I don't know, like, what the capitalists conveniently leave out is that they've, resource extracted entire continents and used violence and force to either genocide those people and take their resources, or just drive them out of the land. So I don't know, it's one big scam, people. I don't know. That's just, it doesn't take much for people to realize they're getting fucked over, True. You don't have to be a genius to figure out you're getting screwed,
True.
But no, I appreciate like the hard line that you're taking on your channel, which is like, I love seeing you get, I'm sorry, Dan, but I love seeing you get angry. Okay.
I know that I got to give people what they want.
I get fired up, so I appreciate it.
We should be mad about this.
Yeah.
It's violence. They want us to like sit down and take the economic violence, and sometimes the violence. Yeah. I'm fucking sick of it. I think about what it does to my loved ones, and it drives me mad. It just makes me fucking furious.
Yeah, our lives are being stolen, The most precious commodity is time. And what is our time devoted to? Securing our basic needs. It's evil.
Oh my God.
It's evil to take food away from people and then charge them for it.
It boggles my mind. It's just because, like, folks, we can think of a better way. They've thought of a better way, and capitalism spent all of its time and energy destroying it instead of doing something for its own people. And that's why we still have so little, is because they're like in this free fall of just exploiting fucking everywhere, all over the world, all of the time. And the compatible left goes, oh, well, we got to vote for the lesser of two evils. It's the most important election of our lifetime. Vote blue no matter who. And then, the more and more material analysis you get, you go, well, hold up a second. Maybe there's some minor differences in the way they run the country here, but these people very much agree with the way that the country, the whole world should be run under the U.S. imperial hegemonic structure that we have. And the Democrats and the Republicans support that equally. Luckily, Kirsten Sinema left the Democrats, so I think she's going to turn into our, what do you think, our anti-imperialist queen? No? That's the thing. They all stand for it is what I'm getting at. That's why we need a revolution or something like that. I don't know.
I saw Kevin Sorbo, who's a chud, a MAGA chud, but sometimes it's like they get some things right. It's like he made a tweet that said, we should defund the FBI. I'm like, sounds pretty nice.
They arrive at the correct conclusion through the wrong pathway. That's what no theory does to a motherfucker.
Yeah. Marxist cinema.
Marxist Kirsten cinema. You'll love to see it. Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, I digress. But I'm trying to think if there's any other thing we could talk about, or if you want to wrap up, we can do that as well.
It's not about that.
I know.
If there's anything you wanted to circle back to, we can do that. Otherwise, I got some other stuff.
We can move on. That's cool.
Okay. Well, love it, Rathbone. Love it. Would you say you're sort of like on an ideological journey right now? You're still like evolving. You're still cooking, baking.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Love it. I
don't think like how you've said. You don't stop learning.
Yeah. Have you already mentioned like specifically like what's changed? What's been changing recently in your journey? What understandings conclusions have you reached? Other than you can feel free to repeat anything you mentioned before if I'm forgetting or whatever.
Yeah, I think just I think just the idea that I'm an American and
proud to be.
I need to be talking about America. I fuck everything else. I can't speak on the crimes of other nations or whatever is going on. And, we live in a material world, and we live in a world of, I'm a material girl. What can I say?
She's a Marxist.
I think, just getting into Parenti and, talking with Marxist Leninists. And I think early on, I think the idea of calling myself a Leninist would have,
yeah, same,
giving me a problem, because it's like you're equating principles to a person, and people are fallible. So, but, I think, and I think that's why originally, I think anarchy, the word anarchy was like very attractive to me, because it just meant that it's a principle and it requires constant application. But like, I don't know, just then when I talk with other anarchists, I'm like, maybe I'm not an anarchist, or maybe I'm just not their brand of anarchy.
I think I have something for you. I think I have something for you right now, Rathbone, but go on, continue.
I don't really see, much difference between you and I, even though we might use different words to identify our politics with. When we talk, we tend to agree on a lot of things. So I don't know. Maybe I am a Marxist-Leninist, but maybe I'm an anarchist too. I mean, why can't there be? Why can't I be principally an anarchist, but also materially a Marxist-Leninist? I mean, I don't.
All right, I got something for you, and I'm gonna go to Kwame Ture now. I'm gonna go to Kwame Ture. If we were talking about Kwame earlier, it seems like I'd love to share you Kwame Ture. This is back when I think he may have still been called Stokely Carmichael, but he's given a talk here and he's taking questions, and someone asks about socialism and it belonging to the Soviet Union. So you can. I want to encourage this idea. Maybe here's a seed we can plant. I call myself a Marxist-Leninist. I also consider myself a progressive, but what the fuck does that mean these days, right? So many people call themselves progressives, but they're like, yay, imperialism. Coup the fuck out of whoever, right? I also consider myself a scientific socialist.
The struggle continues. We get stronger, as a matter of fact, more determined to win. Truth, we know, is universal. It must be. 2 + 2 is 4 in China. 2 + 2 is 4 in Moscow. 2 + 2 is 4 in Timbuktu. 2 + 2 is 4 in Athens, Georgia. Truth is universal. Truth cannot be invented. It can only be observed and reported. Scientific socialism is a truth. Of course, in our compilation of knowledge, in our attempts to help assist ourselves remember things, sometimes for the sake of remembrance, we may become a little bit sloppy about precision. Let me give you an example of what I speak. We may call the laws of gravity Newton's laws. That is to say, we refer to them commonly as Newton's laws. Newton cannot invent that a body in motion tends to stay in motion unless stopped by an outside force. He cannot invent this. The best that Newton can do is to observe it, and the best we can do is to know that he might have been the first man to have recorded it, written or oral. But certainly, as a baby, I knew that a body in motion tends to stay in motion unless stopped by an outside force when I ran into an object. I say we call it Newton's law, but Newton couldn't invent it, he observed it. So too, we come to confuse socialism sometimes in the capitalist system. Wherever we make mistakes will aid us in our mistakes. Aid us in our mistakes. Aid us to make them bigger, that is. Yeah. We come to see socialism sometimes as belonging to Marx, or belonging to Engels, or belonging to the Russians, or belonging to the Chinese. Not at all. Just as the laws of gravity cannot belong to Newton, so too the laws of socialism cannot belong to Marx. They cannot belong to Engels. The best that they can do is to properly observe these laws and record them. The best we can do is say, these are people who were the first we know to have recorded socialism, or concepts and precepts of socialism. Socialism is a universal truth. Its principles are: one, that the people must own and control the means of production. Number two, the system must be planned properly, and there must be all scientific and technique data used to improve it. Power must come from the people and be emanated by the people. I'm coming. That is to say that socialism in Russia, socialism in China, socialism in Europe, socialism in Africa must be the same like 2 + 2. It may look different. Its manifestations will be different. There are different cultures. The culture of China is not the culture of Africa. Because they're different cultures doesn't mean that they're automatically antagonistic to each other. Not at all. The culture of Europe, the culture of Africa are different cultures. Therefore, the manifestation of socialism in Africa, the manifestation of socialism in China, the manifestation of socialism in Russia will be different. But the essence will be the same, as it is with 2 + 2. If we went to China and we wanted to see 2 + 2 is 4, they will do 2 + 2 is 4 for us on the hibiscus board. If we go to Africa and we ask for 2 + 2 is 4, they will do 2 + 2 is 4 for us with the kauri beads. If we go to Russia and we ask for 2 + 2, they may give us 2 + 2 is 4 with wheat grain. They're different manifestations, but the essence is the same. The truth is there. Therefore, we in Africa must fight for scientific socialism. Those in Russia must fight for scientific socialism. And just since no one has a monopoly on socialism, it is not to be assumed that any one country will be the first to arrive at socialism. That one must be clear. And also, since no one has a monopoly on socialism, it cannot be assumed that if one country moves forward and makes mistakes and falls back and even seems to be revising its stand, that's no reason for us to be discouraged. On the contrary, we hold strongly to truth.
See why I showed that to you? You see why I pulled that up? I was like, oh.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's like a bit of analysis that you're like, oh shit, that's a nice little puzzle piece. Fits right in there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of exactly on the heels of what I was just saying.
Fuck yeah.
Makes perfect sense. Yeah, you know, I'm not smart enough to design a future society, but I think one thing is clear that, you know, workers should own, there should be workplace democracy. Workers should own their labor. They should own the means of production. I think that's pretty universal idea, whatever word you associate that with, whether it's Marxist, Leninists, you know, or anarchists, or you know, communist or socialist or whatever. But that's why I think like it you know, it boggles my mind when there's like this leftist infighting. We all agree that workers should own the means of production. We're all workers, you know, class consciousness, class solidarity. It's workers and owners, and that's the class struggle. And that's so ideologically, you know, identity politics getting in the way, I feel like hinders us from achieving that goal. And you know, I think also, this is also one thing I wanted to talk about was like, the fact that everywhere we look, we see culture war. We see the problem is culture war. Like the media wants to put forth the culture war. We don't hear enough about the class war. The culture war doesn't even really exist. And to bring this to a further point, it's I was getting in a fight with someone because I tweeted about Lex Friedman, who's like a compatible leftist, or I don't know if not even a leftist really. He's just like a lib, and he's saying like I'm neither right wing nor left wing. I want to hear all the arguments. And it's like, that just means that you're a fascist to me. Because if you're going to apologize for, being neutral towards fascism, wanting to hear that side is the same as being a fascist.
Yeah.
My point was like, and then somebody got into, I said, this guy stands for nothing. I said, this guy stands for nothing. Yeah. And somebody said, you don't have to be right wing or left wing to stand for something. And then I got into an argument with him about that. And he went on to say, like, if I'm battling for free speech, I want to hear, both. I want to hear both sides. If I'm a, free speech absolutist, like Elon Musk likes to say. But there's no material analysis in that. There's no class analysis in that, because once you realize there is no, when you have the ruling class owning all the means of how to disseminate speech. When you have the ruling class owning mass media, there is no free speech. Those ideas are marginal, they're repressed. And so, and he was trying to make this point, like how it's not tied, free speech is not tied to money and resources. And I'm like, it absolutely is, all these things, and I said, there's only one political issue. It's class antagonism. It once, and it goes back to once the workers own the workplace, it begins there. And then you'll see that, like, once the majority of the people are represented, in society, then you'll have things like free speech. You'll have all these other cultural issues that will come from that. But it all comes from, like, class struggle. I just can't see any issue not being rooted in class struggle is what I'm trying to get at. If you're fighting for free speech, but you don't understand that 5 corporations own all of the mass media, and own all the PR industry, then if you don't have that analysis, then you're fighting. It's a wasted battle. Anyway, so that's why I appreciate what you're doing. And other leftists, incompatible leftists, is just taking it back to class. We got to bring it back to class. It's 2 classes, workers and owners. Everything comes from that, and all this little infighting about cultural issues is not as important, and will be settled once you've settled the first question, I guess, or the first problem. Yeah.
Smoke weed every day.
Smoke weed every day, every 15 minutes.
Same. Indica sativa hybrid.
I think I'm going to go with my friend Buddy Head on this one and just say that they probably are meaningless. But I think historically, I go with sativas because I just thought that that's what makes me, anything that gives me energy and makes me more creative. Yeah. I can't smoke weed. I can't make music without smoking weed first.
You want to raw dog emotions? No thanks.
That's it.
Yeah. Any musical things we could be looking forward to?
Yeah. Well, I'm working on a new record right now. I released a record last month called Class War, because it's all about class consciousness, baby.
It's all class war. They don't want us to realize it. And they don't want us to understand that concept. Isn't that so fucking... It's just so basic that the liberals don't get this.
Yeah. It's really so simple, right? Yeah. So, so there's thank you for showing my YouTube page, making music videos and, I'm working on the sequel to Class War called More Class War. And then
Part 2, Electric Boogaloo.
And then, Buddy Head and I are going to release, Living in America LP. And we're starting a GoFundMe for that because we're going to release it on vinyl. And, so I guess, people can tune into that development, and if you'd like to contribute to the GoFundMe, I'll be sharing that soon. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Just making music and just writing more songs about class war.
Rathbone.
Yeah,
Rathbone.
Oh, hey, I saw that Ollie's in the chat. Ollie released a new song last night, and it's fucking dope. And a new music video to go with it. Buddy Head and Ollie did, and it's really, really good. And if you guys are into cool shit, you should check it out sometime.
Oh my god,
it's about how billionaires fucking suck.
How did you know I'm into cool things?
You know, you just look. I could just see it. It's written on your face.
Yeah, incredible. Rathbone, I want to thank you for being with me today. Before we let you go, how can my audience get in on the Rathbone fun? You know, we can send them to your YouTube page. We can send them to your Twitter. You have a Patreon.
That's true too. I just recently set up a merch store as well for like shirts and stuff. If you want to help me eat food and pay my rent, I have a link tree. It's on my Instagram, which has all the links. Yeah. But yeah, YouTube, I mean, subscribing to my YouTube, I'm trying to get to 10K subscribers on YouTube. That would be immense. And then I also stream a lot as I write music on Twitch. So yeah, I'm usually streaming like every day, and as I make music, and I like to hang out with chat and talk about shit. So you can find me there usually. So
awesome. Had a blast hanging out with you today, Rathbone. We'll have to schedule another time. Do it again soon. I really hope so.
Absolutely, brother.
All right. Well, we'll let you go, Rathbone. Love your face. We'll talk to you again soon. We'll see you. Peace. All right. That's it, everyone. Say goodbye to Rathbone. Bye. Goodbye. All right. See you, buddy.